Then hello and welcome to this thematic focus on climate change and climate justice happening in the frame of Spielart Festival in collaboration and hosted by Bellevue de Monaco here in Munich. My name is Manon Hase and I'm part of the Spielart Festival team. This is the festival's first hybrid event, and I would like to address a warm welcome to all of you who are here, even if it's not that many people in the small venue. And of course to everyone that's attending the event on Zoom in the stream today. The title of this weekend, When Do We Want It?, almost seems like a self-answered question with regards to climate change and climate justice. When Fridays for Future activists marched the streets and Greta Thunberg was still a teenager and minor, everyone seemed to understand that climate justice was urgently needed, scanting what do we want climate justice and when do we want it now. Extreme weather conditions, fires in the Amazon forest, the rise of sea levels, increased temperatures in the area around the Lake Chad in Central Africa, just as much as droughts in the land of the Sami, in the Finnish-Russian borderlands, deforestation and extractivist industries in the mountains of the region of Puebla in Mexico, all have to be read as clear signs for climate change, a human-made change to the Earth ecosystem in the age of the Anthropocene. Who is and should be made responsible for the climatic crisis that we are facing right now at a global level? What ways can be found to protect those who are most threatened by the crisis? And where to look to find solutions? The COVID-19 pandemic highlighted and deepened the socioeconomic inequalities between and within countries. With climate change, the same effect can be observed. While the devastation is hitting the global south the hardest, in countries of the global north, Black and indigenous and people of color are hit the hardest. The conditions as well as the effects of climate change are unevenly distributed across the world. In regions which are already severely affected by climate change, the climatic and ecological catastrophe leads to additional political, social, and economic wounds. Countries and regions that were formerly colonized bear the brunt of climate change impacts, while countries that started the colonial project are those that shape the global development agenda. At the same time, developed countries have failed to meet their commitments in the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change and the Paris Agreement. Before the Munich premiere of T.G. Ahmed's dance piece, The Drying Prayer, about the climate catastrophe at Lake Chad, this thematic focus is not supposed to look at the future with resignation, but reassembles different viewpoints and aims for exchange of perspectives, of ideas, including artists, thinkers, and activists. We will start today with an introduction note by Alton Krenak, one of the most important political activists of the indigenous rights movement in Brazil. His collection of essays, How to Postpone the End of the World, has recently published in German. In order to link the Bellevue to the Hoch-X theater, where The Drying Prayer will be shown tonight, the Munich-based photographer Arno Trümper, who traveled to Chad and the region, will tell us more about his encounters in that region, leading to the photo exhibition Shoring Up Stability that is surrounding us here at the Bellevue and will be opening at Hoch-X tonight as part of the festival program. His photographs illustrate a study by Adelpho, an NGO think tank that studied the effects of climate change on the countries surrounding the Chad Lake, which currently are confronted with the direct effects of droughts. Shortly after this, we will show a film of Amanda Pina, Climatic Dances. Amanda Pina, the choreographer of Danza y Frontera, a part of her series Endangered Human Movements that opened the Spielart Festival last night. Her close collaborator, Alessandro Cuesta, will join us via Zoom from Mexico City. and describe how climate and dance interlace and how indigenous practices become one tool against climate change. We will continue tomorrow with a presentation and film by Paulina Feodorov, who has documented indigenous-led watershed restorations by the Skold Sami as an attempt to survive the climatic changes that are drastically visible in the region in Northern Europe. The short film, The River Is Me, is a portrait of the first river worldwide that has been given legal personhood, and that will follow also tomorrow in the program. Furthermore, Olufemi Taiwo, political philosopher from Washington, D.C., will discuss matters of climate colonialism and raise the concept of climate reparations in conversation with Mulemo Moiloa. We will end tomorrow with poems by Naomi Ortiz, who lives between the Mexican and US-American borderlands. Naomi fights for climate, eco, and social justice, just as well as for disability justice. For her, the effects of the climate crisis are always linked to her social condition and position as a disabled person. I would like to thank everyone, all the participants and collaborators for their thoughts and ideas, and the Bellevue for the venue here tonight. And now I hope that a lot of people will join us for an interesting afternoon. And now to Alton Krenak. Thank you.
Nós nos acostumamos durante tanto tempo com a terra nos embalando, acordando de manhã, dando o que comer e o que sonhar. Nos acostumamos. E nós vivemos aquela experiência que foi a de naturalizar essa dádiva maravilhosa, engolfados por uma mentalidade de consumir tudo ao nosso redor. Nós fomos nos afastando desse corpo sensível do organismo da Terra, como se a gente pudesse sacar do solo, dos rios, das florestas, tudo o que a gente quer para o nosso bem-estar, para o nosso consumo. Imersos numa mentalidade de mercado e de consumo, a gente foi se afastando da origem de tudo que a gente precisa para estar vivo. Nós nos divorciamos do corpo da Terra, como se o nosso corpo pudesse se destacar e experimentar uma projeção, extraterrena, separado do corpo da Terra, esquecendo que é a nossa fricção com esse corpo da Terra, a experiência das crianças rolando no chão, mexendo na terra, enfiando a mão, isso que dá sentido à vida, essa fricção, que faz a experiência de viver ser uma dança nossa, de corpos humanos, com todos os outros seres, foi se destacando como essa experiência centralizada no humano. O humano, o ser humano. Eu costumo me referir a essa experiência como a centralidade do humano, o especismo. A espécie humana se esquecendo que ela também é terra. É tudo, é participação da vida intensa com todos os outros organismos. Nós somos organismos de Gaia. Os nossos parentes, os nossos irmãos chamam de Mãe Terra. Esse eco ainda me alcança com esse sentimento de que eu sou terra. Mas nós estamos sendo o tempo inteiro convidados a essa devoração de mundo, onde a própria ideia de um planeta fica diluída no desejo de consumir coisas. A beleza desse organismo vasto que é a Terra se resume praticamente em mercadoria. A gente abre um armário, uma gaveta, uma prateleira, uma geladeira e vamos tirando coisas dali. É como se fosse uma coisa infinita. A gente pode tirar, pode tirar. O alimento, o que a gente veste, né? Todo aparato que a gente consome no cotidiano é terra. Mas existe uma finíssima camada disso que nós chamamos terra, que é como uma epiderme. É como se fosse essa pele mais superficial que protege o nosso corpo do clima, da temperatura, do frio, do calor, e que nos permite ter, inclusive, tato, olfato, paladar. Só quem experimentou passar um tempo sem sentir o sabor, sem poder beber a água e sentir que a água tem gosto. Você só descobre isso quando você fica sem paladar. Quando você começa a ingerir um líquido que não faz diferença para você o sentido que ele tem para o seu corpo mesmo, para os seus órgãos vitais. A água maravilhosa, a água maravilhosa. Essa imagem que não sai das minhas retinas, cansada de ver o Rio Doce, esse rio que passa no fundo do nosso quintal, que nós os Krenak chamamos de Uatu, o Atu Miareré, o Atu Miareré. Ele foi devastado por uma enchente de lama tóxica da mineração que estava numa contenção há 40 anos, se estragando até que ela derramou sobre o corpo do rio e transformou aquela calha do rio numa matéria plástica. Eu costumo dizer que é um carpete podre. Uma imagem terrível, mas que a gente está convivendo com ela já há mais de 5 anos. Olhando com o desejo de ver a água ali, de ver vida. Já é trágico ver um rio passando por isso. E ver toda a extensão do cerrado, da Mata Atlântica, do Pantanal, da floresta, isso que nós chamamos de terra, o solo agriculturável, aquele que a FAO incentiva que se cuide dele para que ele continue produzindo alimento, num país desse tamanho que é o Brasil, um país continental, com milhares de quilômetros de áreas chamadas agriculturáveis, como se fosse um destino dessa camada do solo responder para nós, os humanos, produzindo para a gente, produzindo para a gente. Tem que produzir para a gente alguma coisa. A grande produção de grãos no país, que se chama agronegócio, ele se autonomeia que é pop, que é agro e que é tudo. Eu mesmo demorei a despertar para o fato objetivo de que esse planeta que nós chamamos de Terra, ele só tem uma finíssima camada de epiderme, que é mesmo solo, terra. Essa que é usada na agricultura, para produzir tudo que a gente usa, desde a roupa até os remédios e o alimento. Acontece que o nosso divórcio desse corpo da terra, essa separação, ela está criando uma espécie de doença no corpo da terra, uma ferida. E ela está se manifestando agora na forma de uma poeira densa, como se a gente estivesse numa tempestade no deserto. A surpresa é que aquele material suspenso é solo. Aquele solo maravilhoso, cheio de vida, produzindo grãos, produzindo comida, produzindo roupa, remédio, tudo. Agora ele está subindo, impedindo a avistar o horizonte, criando um toldo assim na paisagem. Uma imagem feia, impressionante e assustadora de uma nuvem de poeira suja. Uma poeira suja. pairando sobre as cidades, derrubando a rede elétrica, interrompendo as comunicações. Por um instante as pessoas ficam mesmo apavoradas. Só que é impressionante que no outro dia está tudo funcionando. Tudo funcionando. Nós tivemos o advento da pandemia, que apavorou a todos nós, que matou muita gente. Com a mesma naturalidade, a gente foi retomando as rotinas e as pessoas chegam a dizer que já existe um novo normal. Eu, que fiquei durante a pandemia, que para mim não acabou ainda, observando essa distopia, esse divórcio do nosso corpo, do corpo da nossa mãe, a Terra, estou cada vez mais chocado com a nossa capacidade de naturalizar o desastre. É como se qualquer desastre pudesse vir, que a gente está aqui para integrar na nossa rotina. E eu confesso para vocês que essa poeira, ela ainda está pressionando as minhas retinas, como se estivessem acontecendo bem aqui, na minha cara. Separando o nosso corpo do corpo da nossa Mãe Terra, que não para de nos ensinar, e que é incansável em dar exemplo para a gente de que nós somos também terra, que não tem outra maneira da gente continuar existindo se for divorciado da produção de vida que esse organismo maravilhoso que nós aprendemos a chamar de Mãe, Mãe Terra, Pachamama, Gaia, e que mesmo os cientistas que até outro dia eram contidos em admitir que esse organismo é inteligente, é vivo, já admitem isso. E alguns deles dizem que ela se expressa em amor incondicional. É a Terra, a Mãe Terra, que agora está soprando sobre as nossas cabeças uma fina camada de solo que está virando veneno, para ver se nós aprendemos alguma coisa. Aqui no Brasil nós ainda estamos vivendo o paradoxo de ter as agências do Estado que deveriam orientar as pessoas, fazer uma campanha educativa. Nós temos essa gente dizendo que isso não tem importância nenhuma, que nós somos o celeiro do mundo. Mesmo a gente com estatística escandalosa de 30 milhões de pessoas, incluída na linha de pobreza absoluta, gente que não sabe o que vai comer amanhã. Mas o governo diz que o Brasil tem alimento para o mundo inteiro. Como se nós tivéssemos sequestrado essa epiderme da Terra, e agora nós ameaçamos e obrigamos ela a produzir o que a gente quer. Quanto grão a gente quer, quanto minério a gente quer, quanta madeira a gente quer. Nós estamos violentando a vida sob os nossos pés. E essa poeira feia, ela pode ser um retrato desse ano de 2021, quando nós estamos na iminência de mais outros desastres que nos mostram que a gente está se separando do corpo da nossa Mãe Terra.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great honor for me to be able to show you my photographs from the photographic project, Storing Up Stability. I'm a journalist here based in Munich and photographer. I'm working for different institutions, for example, Adelphi, who made this study about the relation between climate change and stability of countries. The scientists of Adelphi were traveling around Lake Chad, through the countries around Lake Chad, and interviewing people, talking to the people, asking village people, asking politicians, asking officials, asking children, asking women, to make a picture in the study about the situation in Lake Chad that was affected extremely by climate change. What they found out was quite astonishing, because they saw climate change itself was not the reason for the instability in these countries. Climate change was something like it was strengthening the situation, but the main reason for the situation in this region was bad governance. That means if you have an administration that doesn't do its work, that doesn't make what it should do, which doesn't serve the people, then the people are losing their resilience to cope with the problems of climate change and of what is happening and the changes that are happening in the region. So they can't adopt anymore. It wasn't really planned in the beginning, I think, by Adelphi to show this, but the study became a study about bad governance and about people suffering because of their governments. One effect of this is Boko Haram, and that I was also focusing on. I wanted to find out what does Boko Haram? Why exists Boko Haram? Why has Boko Haram the possibility to survive for so many years now? Boko Haram actually started to be a social movement against corruption. It was young people who had no perspective and who they wanted to fight for an own life with perspective, with an own livelihood. Because their fight was without success, it came to more and more fights between the state, the army, the police, and these people who call themselves later Boko Haram. So I don't want to say Boko Haram is not a really dramatic, really dangerous terrorist group. But the roots of Boko Haram are a social movement. And that's quite, for me, it was quite shocking to see this, that people who are suffering in these situations, bad governments enforced by, start to fight against humanity, to fight against their own people, to become terrorists. I was free to do anything when I traveled there. Adelphi just told me, bring back some film footage, bring back some photos. We want to have something for our study to illustrate it. So I followed the scientists. I went with them to the interviews. We were going by boat on the Lake Chad, doing hydrological surveys. And I tried to show the situation on the lake, around the lake. And as far as we had already the results during my travel, I tried to visualize the results. And the results of that you see on these photos. On the website you see a link to the study. And there you can also see in the study there are some more photos. Yeah, so I thank you very much. I hope you will come to the event tonight. There you will see more photos. And also small texts to every photo. So you will find also small text to these photos who are here. You find it also on the internet, so you can see a little bit what are the results of the study. Okay, thank you very much.
Wir machen eine ganz kurze Pause. We are going to make a short break before the next film starts. I hope that the technical a drink. There's drinks at the door, and we continue in 10 to 15 minutes. Thank you. Hello, Alessandro. We're not having the best time with the technical things at the moment, but it should start. Ist nicht auf stumm. Nein.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay. Okay. So.
Hello, Alessandro. You can
Thank you.
start your presentation. Very happy to see you.
Oh, hi, madam. I was getting a different message over here. Okay, hi. How are you?
Good.
Should I begin?
Yes, you are on, and we're looking forward to your talk.
Okay, thank you so much. Well, let me start again. I want to thank the Spielart Festival people, especially Sophie, Manon, Christopher, and all others for their invitation, their kind invitation. And I've been here. It's early morning in Mexico City where I live, so I've been here for a while, listening first to Aiton Krenak and then to the other presenters. I was enjoying the if you can say that, the video of Amanda, which is very special to me. It's before I begin, it's interesting to be invited by this festival, which is happening traditionally in Munich. Which is a beautiful city in Germany, a rich city in Germany, a city with a lot of industry, especially car industry and technology, which is, it runs on fossil fuels mostly, right? And now on clean energy, as some people like to call it, which uses lithium. So what we're seeing is basically how some people, like in Munich, become rich, fantastically rich, using all the other parts of the planet to become so, either with fossil fuels, now with lithium batteries. So it's interesting that we are here with their funding. And this is a sign of the times, I guess, where there are no more curtains, closed. Everything is becoming more open. Anyway, I made a presentation for you, so I'm going to share my screen now. If I can find the button, of course. That is okay. Here it goes. Please confirm that you guys are seeing it. I hope you're seeing it. Okay, great. Well, my name is Alessandro Cuesta. I'm an anthropologist. Sorry. Okay, great. From Mexico, and I've been working for 16 years with a particular group of people called Masewal or Nahua people in the mountains of Puebla in central Mexico. And I've been working on a lot of subjects as an academic, but I've become, something else. So I want to begin this talk sharing with you what we at some point could call a myth of origin, how the world began for Masewal people traditionally. And it's interesting that they have a rich mythology and stories of the past, and so it's hard to pick one, but this is the one that makes sense, and this is the one that explains the world for them. So what they say is that the world is broken into the world that we know today. It's already broken. It's already destroyed. We live in a destroyed world. They have been living for a long time in a world that is already destroyed. When we do some research on the history of colonialism in the region, we can only agree with them regarding this end of the world. So what they say is that at some point, earth and sky were once united, and they formed a unified world. And this unified world was connected by pillars, giant, humongous pillars. But it was destroyed at some point by envy, by malice. So let me see if this works. Okay, this works. So before the pillars were destroyed, there was no aging and no sickness, no sadness and no death. People would climb up and down these pillars and climb down from them as children again. They would climb up as when they reached old age, and then they would climb down as children. So there was, again, no disease, no sickness, no death. So after the pillars were destroyed, the ruins of those pillars, the sort of the carcasses, what is left of those pillars are the mountains of today in which they live. So basically, Masewal people assume that they live amongst the ruins of a previous world. But that doesn't mean that mountains are not relevant or powerful, because still in mountains, people can connect the two worlds, the sky and the earth. And mountains are, even broken, still powerful, because they keep the water, they provide life, and they grow forests, animals, and people. Indeed, mountains are living entities. So how does this work? For Masewal people, there is a key word that makes everything work. And this key word is kilnamik, or remembrance. So the world, as they know it, our world, it exists as long as it is remembered. So our actions need to constantly remember the world. Otherwise, it will disappear. It will dismantle somehow. So many ceremonies, many rituals, many words, many parliaments, ceremonial parliaments, many actions that people take have to do with actions to activate the memory in other people, but also in spirits and other entities. So this is how a mountain looks, and so I wanted to show you the sort of the constant cloudiness of mountains in this region. Clouds themselves are somehow living, and they nest and sleep every night among the mountains, and elevate in the morning, and move, walk. So this is a town where I've been working for a long time. It's called Tepetzintla. It's somehow it means the seat of the mountain, and we can see that it's right in the middle of a huge mountain, we can't see the top because it's always clouded, almost always clouded. And you can see the smallness, right? The difference in scale between the houses and the town and the mountain. People are constantly reminded that they live in the mountain, that the mountain does not belong to them. If something is like that, then they would belong to the mountain. So let me see. Okay, I'm having some problems with the control. Anyway, so that's the town. That's another angle. So that's the mountain that is in front of the town. So basically, people exist between mountains, and mountains generate all life, but also many ideas that people ponder upon. So now the problem is, of course, forgetfulness or amokilnamik, lack of remembrance. And lack of remembrance is what we are suffering today, according to Masewal people. This is a map. You might see where this particular region is located in Mexico, and this is a meteorological map, so we can see how from the South Pacific and the Atlantic Ocean and the Gulf of Mexico, they are constantly the whole country, but I mean more dramatically in this area, they are constantly being affected by hurricanes and tropical storms. This is a historical condition. This is a geological, in a way, condition, but it has been accelerating in the last couple of decades. More drastic hurricanes, more hurricanes, and more storms, and more damage. So this is just a summary of, again, this is another map that shows you sort of where this area is. It's not very precise, but it gives you an idea. And of course, the triangle, the yellow triangle, is huge. It's too big. The place is way smaller, of course. But you can see again how these two forces between the South Pacific and the Gulf of Mexico are constantly putting pressure and putting water and storms. Okay, so that's the weather patterns, if you will. Now, this is a map. It's not even the latest map that I've been able to acquire, but it's a relevant map because all of these sites have been confirmed. So this is the region, and these are the concessions for gas extraction, mineral extraction, and dams, because of course water itself is being privatized, it's being sequestered, it's being appropriated by transnational corporations, so this is the other sort of cataclysm that they're facing. Not only the effects of global climate change, accelerating storms and hurricanes, which have been historical but are accelerated. Now it's the sort of abuse, the extractive neocolonialism in which they are living. Well, that's where I work. So you can see it's surrounded by these so-called mega proyectos. That's the local name. So mega projects, and this is a general term which which is used to say mines, gas extraction, or dams, or roads, any sort of big project that people from outside bring. So during the last century, the last 20 years, Masewal people have been suffering in the region from landslides, storms, earthquakes, and mining. So for them, it's just, you see, it's a unified catastrophe. So for Masewal terms, what is climate change? So we have many definitions. We have definitions that can come from science. But these people they have created their own assessment, their own variables. So they say there is a disorder in the world. The seasons are moved. Things are not growing the way they were supposed to grow. Events are not happening when they are supposed to happen. And they say that this is a disorder. They also say that this disorder can be placed in specific spots on the landscape. So you can register in the land itself the disorder. They say that the effects are cumulative, right? That they add up. And now it's interesting that most of the causes are human. They say that it's an industrial and economic greed, and that there's also a moral sort of deviousness, right? A wickedness, a disrespectful attitude towards the land. So all of these they consider to be the same thing. They are all connected. And deep down, it's the big cause could be called immoral behavior. So if we think about it, their assessment is not only very acute, but it's also very similar to what capitalism studied as a global phenomenon could be explained, right? It's really predicated in immoral behavior, in colonization, slavery, abuse, robbery, legalized robbery by metropolitan powers, and by that I mean Europe and traditionally Western Europe and the US, but nowadays also Russia, China, Australia, etc. And of course the national governments of each of the countries in Latin America, including Mexico. So it's interesting to appreciate this formula, right? So forgetfulness, to not remember, it's a moral issue. And they say forgetfulness is expressed by detachment of younger generations from traditional farming, the abandonment of all ceremonies and visitations to the landscape, people not using the traditional language, which is Nahuatl. This is added to the sort of unchecked and what they consider to be unbelievable ambition of foreigners. They consider foreigners to be stupid, right? Because from their perspective, they're killing everybody by greed. And this, of course, the overtake of water and land resources. And finally, what they consider to be the most damaging aspect is expelling the spirits of the land that live inside each of the mountains and water reservoirs inside of them. So spirits, which are like non-human entities that are allies of humans, that are sort of like the caretakers of the land, they are just leaving the place. And a spiritless place, if you will, a place where no spirits dwell, will die, will truly die. So basically, the assessment is the world in its totality, it's in need of repair. Okay. So how do you repair the world? So you dance, of course. You dance because dancing is a way of, from the traditional Masewal perspective, is a way to become someone else, but also to invoke other entities into your own body. So you create ultimately a sort of mimetic empathy. Those are weird words. What I'm trying to say is that by invoking other bodies in the bodies of the dancer, and the dancer by becoming a different being, you create a social relation. Someone or something that is truly foreign, truly different, becomes less different, less foreign, even friendly. And that's a strategy. That's a way of doing politics. So dancing is, yes, it's a form of art. It's very expressive. It's very intense, and it's a whole experience. But it is also a political tool. It is also a way to explain things to others. Okay, and the word that they're, well, not the word, but the concept that they're using for this is an encompassing concept called Tlatiquipanolist. Tlatiquipanolist means basically co-sustenance. That's how they translate it. So it's a Masewal ancient term for what we like to call nowadays sustainability. And it's a bit different, right? Because Tlatiquipanolist has to do with groups of living entities, humans, animals, plants, spirits, sustaining each other, feeding each other. A famous, principle could be the relation between the living and the dead. The living feed the dead, even, of course, after they die. They are still remembered, right? That's how the world keeps united, by remembering. So you remember the dead, and you feed them a few times a year, and so they don't forget you. They need also to remember that you exist in the world. And this creates a sort of a network of remembrance, and this in turn becomes sustainability, co-sustenance, Tlatiquipanolist. But there are also other ways of creating Tlatiquipanolist, which are offerings to the owners of the mountains, visiting the caves where they live, offering them food, also going to the top of the highest mountains and leaving their food for the spirits of the sky that they're flying above the earth. So this is a local friend, and when we were talking about how they started to dance again, because dances were something that they did, but they were sort of not doing a lot. And in the last couple of decades, dances have picked up. Not by any government incentive, not by tourism, not by any foreign, if you will, stimulus, but by sort of an expression of local concern. When people there are preoccupied, they dance, right? And this is what he told me. We didn't know what to do, so we remember how to dance again. Dance is something natural. It's not necessarily something you learn. It's something you do. You need to remember it. So here he is. And these are some images from people there. Some of them are dancing. Some of them are making costumes and masks and puppets that they use also, because there's a lot of theater and a lot of mixing of techniques and entities in each dance. So I guess I chose these images just to show you how dedicated they are, how public these things are for them. Because indeed they are political, as I said. So these are more images of Masewal people in Tepetzintla dancing. And you can see, for example, that the masks show white people, right? It's a light pink color that they use, but you can see that it's not the color of their skin. And the features are supposed to be foreigners, basically white foreigners. And so they become foreigners. This is what I was telling you before, this empathy, right? So by using the faces of the foreign people, the white people, they try to come to terms with them. They try to understand them. And they drink and they sometimes get drunk and they keep on dancing. So they sort of try to have a good time, but also to make people more social through their own bodies. It's a different dance in which Masewal people become, each of them, a mountain, for example. This dance is called Tipicayome, or Bodies of the Mountain. I think Amanda will talk more about that. She has found a lot of inspiration in this particular dance. So we can see that they become mountains. Then they can become white people. They can become many other things. They can become animals, ancestor spirits, but they can also become mountains, living mountains, dancing inside of the town, sort of like a miniaturization of the landscape. So here are three people from different groups of dance, the Tipicayome, the Huehuentillo, or ancestors, and she's from a different dance, Toreadores. So these are the dancers, the Tipicayome dancers, preparing before the dance. And I just wanted to show you this very briefly. When I say that they are mountains, what am I talking about? Well, each dancer has a mountain on his head, and he becomes the mountain body itself, the slopes, if you will. And on his crown, they call this crown or hat, they place the elements of each mountain, from the rains and the trees and little mirrors that are the caves and the water springs, to the moss, and even with ribbons they show the rainbow and the winds. And they even wear a mask, a black mask, because they say that the earth is black, right? And this is their forest face, the Guoshayak, the wood face or the forest face. So these are the Tipicayome dancing in front of the church. Again, So I guess to close this segment, I would say that dancing under this perspective is yes, it's a tradition, yes, it's folklore. It can be reduced to many of these aspects, but we should see it as a technology, as a very sophisticated technology that people have created to visualize fluid connections between landscape, spirits, and people. It's not very different from philosophy, and it's not very different from environmental sciences. They allow themselves to think and act in the world, and dancing is a sort of technique that allows them to think about this. Again, not much different from our, activists in the West, for example. So finally, and the last point I want to make today, spirits are active, politically speaking, and they are fighting against extractivism and neocolonialism in the highlands. Okay, takes a few seconds. There's a delay of a few seconds. And so, for example, this is one of the many organizations that are acting, local indigenous organizations that are acting against these projects through activism, through awareness, creating awareness, also registering and all the damage, calling scientists and activists to see and to generate sort of press around these issues, and also pushing the government to respect and protect this area. So the name in Spanish is Consejo en Defensa de la Vida y el Territorio, so it's Council in the Defense of Life and Territory. It's called Tillatlali, which means land in Totonac and Nahuatl languages, which are the biggest, strongest indigenous languages that are being spoken in the region. But I want you to also see the logo that they have designed. This is a contemporary sort of design that they've created, and it's basically a mountain. It's a mountain, and it's covered by clouds on top and human footsteps outside. But inside of it, we can see a pyramid, right? Like a city, and a flower, and a plant of corn, a plant of maize, and down we can see water. So this is a strong concept that comes from a history of a particular way of urbanization in the region, Mexico and Mesoamerica. Altepetl, right? Water mountain, which was a political unit and has been for a long time. So it's still alive, and not only alive, but sort of recomposed. So this is a public art that young people are producing in these little towns and villages, and it shows you probably in a very crude way what they see. And it's basically to your left, to your right, I guess, you can see a world destroyed with machines and bulldozers and guys in suits and people suffering, and the mountains in the back, just it's barren. And in the left, you can see people playing the violin, and everything is green, and everything is celebrating. Everyone is celebrating. So it's a pitch battle. It's a duality of opposition, right? There's no middle ground. Extractivism is destroying the place. I don't think you can find a clearer, more direct message of the damage that these people are seeing. and the way in which they want life to be, right? Which is on your left. And please pay attention that in this recent public art done by local people, not by any famous or foreign artist, but by local people, they make an emphasis on putting characters in masks, right? So we can see people wearing masks of like pig and a human skull, death and abuse maybe, and on the left it's a tiger. It's a local version of the jaguar, which is a spirit protector. So this is also how spirits look like and how they are part of the local concerns. These photos are of protests and assemblies informing people about, in that particular case, a dam that was being imposed in a town close to Tepetzintla. But in the top photo, you can see that the ancestors are there. So the dead are part of the local dead, the grandparents of the people there. They're listening to the information. They're part of the assembly because they are being given food and a space for them and incense, and in that moment they come and they also take part of the local actions. A poster locally designed, and you can either see people wearing hats like houses, but basically it's just houses being inhabited by the dead under them. So, and they are watching us, right? So the dead are also an important part of the protests, because the dead are all buried in the mountains. They are the mountains, right? They have become the mountains. After dying, their bodies have reunited with the mountain. So when you destroy the mountain, you're destroying the ancestors in a very direct way. There is no metaphor. Last but not least, it's just another image that they have produced, and we can see a couple, an indigenous couple, throwing incense and making an offering to the land. You can see the skulls of their own ancestors there, and the water that is under the earth, and behind them, the deity of Mother Earth, Tlaltikpagnana, right? So these are all posters calling for people to act and protest. So now, what can we see now that we can see differently from when I started to talk? We can see a complex world, a world that is not made out of an accident, a world that is not sustained by exploitation, but sustained by constant remembrance and respectful actions. I hope that my talk helps you to also see yourselves in the world a bit different and a bit more connected. Thank you so much. Hey, hola Amanda.
Thank you very much, Alessandro. That was very beautiful. There is some people live here. You know, this is a hybrid format, and here in the room, it was very beautiful to hear you. I have to attest for that. I was thinking while I was listening, in which way, very shortly, could we expel the ghost of Eurocentric ontology, which would reduce everything that you said to cultural belief, and it would not see it as a world-making practice. in the sense that if we think about the way the Masewal are structuring their living, the livelihood, those beliefs act as world-making practices, and they are deactivated, right, by the great corporations and by sometimes national narrative, which is modern colonial, and reduced to cultural belief. How can you, how can we exorcise that anthropocentric and Eurocentric view, which would, you know, think, oh, the Masewal so nice, they're me.
It is very difficult.
Yes.
Yeah, it is very difficult. It's a tough question. I think Europeans still believe themselves to be superior, just because they are very, very violent. They have a history of violence and invasion, and they excel at violence and aggression. And the history of Europe is the history of war. They have been fighting and killing each other in many fantastic and creative ways. And when they were done with that, they started killing people in Asia, in Africa, in Latin America, and elsewhere, everywhere else. So it's very hard to convince a sort of European ontology of superiority predicated on the dominion by violence, that other ways are equally good or even better. And I guess what we could do, we could imagine a test. We could imagine a test, a very, if you will, a very German test of efficiency. And so we could place, 5,000 years of efficiency against what, 500-600 years of European colonialism and already crumbling the whole planet, animals and plants, insects, fish, all of them dying in 600 years perhaps of global colonization process. So the results speak for themselves, right? The societies have created complex ecologies for thousands of years. And sure enough, they're not rich, they're not wealthy, but they have designed a very intelligent way of continuity. So yeah, we could apply a test and see how it goes. I don't think we in the West would pass the test.
Yeah, thank you. I was thinking more also to approach because you talk so beautifully about dance, and that the way you speak about dance really it is for me, as also an artist or dance maker, a form of understanding dance in which dance is not only about self-expression, the expression of the individual or the self, but really a political and maybe even a socio-environmental action, right? And I have the feeling that dancing produces a certain way of thinking that brings together, no? That kind of through empathy, as you started to mention, can create another form of relation different to the relation of science. And I'm not saying that science is not great and doesn't produce solutions for many things, but science has learned to know by distance, by isolation from relation, no? Like you put something alone, you get to know it through distance and objectivity. And that form of knowing, in a way, doesn't allow us to really feel what we are getting to know. It allows us to get information about it, but not to really feel like a mountain feels, not to really feel like a river feels, or like, I don't know, a forest, a source of water, the ocean. So in a way, I think that activistic and artistic practices maybe are trying to do what the Masewal are already doing, which is to find ways of that could allow us to sense differently all those other bodies. And I loved how you talked, and also Ailton Krenak, who spoke first, how you approach those earth beings as bodies. because it's very suspicious now that in Western ontology only humans and animals have bodies, maybe insects, but you can say a body of water. But what about a mountain? No? Can it be a body? And which kind of body is, and in which way it catalyzes life, and it can digest and produce water, air, oxygen, etc. Breathing body, you know. So, yeah, I think in a way the Masewal proposal that you so beautifully sketch can be a practice of art making, of activism, and of trying to really make a sense the earth, but also our body as earth, as Ailton Krenak so beautifully mentioned.
Yeah, I agree. I may add that what you were saying about science, I think science is about the objectification of the world, right? You go to the doctor and he sends you for, lab studies, and your cells and your organs and everything becomes objectified. And in a way, this is a great technique because all of us have pretty much the same organs, and they can compare and find solutions through experimentation. And dances, as you were saying, goes exactly the opposite way. It's about the subjectification of the world. So if science creates the world as a collection of objects, some of them are living, some of them are not, dances produce a world of subjects, of a world of people that doesn't matter how they look, it doesn't matter how their bodies are, their sizes, it doesn't matter if they're visible or invisible, but they ultimately are people. And people will always be polite, will always want to relate, will always have something in common. You just need to find what that is. So these are almost two opposite projects of world making.
Yes, totally. And I wonder, I have the feeling that we are lacking, we're lacking very much this alternative mode of relating, right? Which is through dance, through enjoyment. And if I imagine resistance towards climate change, which is such a painful subject, especially if you experience yourself, I can only think that the way to resist goes through enjoyment, through, actions that are embodied, that are enfleshed, that are live and vibrant. But what yet has to happen, and I think that's, I envision the only way out is to really push certain legal transformations which would allow us to have ecocide as a punished behavior. And in a way, the fact that it doesn't exist in our legislations makes it very difficult to point out, for example, in the case of my mother and the place I grew up, why even if Anglo-American has a lot of money to create very good publicity and really help communities to be on their side for the extraction by allocating resources and so on, what they are doing is the destruction of a glacier. And can we afford more glaciers being destroyed today? And 10% of, I think, the world, well, I'm bad with numbers, but check how many percent of world's glaciers are in South America, and particularly in Chile and Argentina. So we are not talking about something that happens to poor brown or black people anymore, but we are talking about something that is happening to all of us, right? And this is, I think, the turning point we are in, which allow us to be here also. Yeah.
Yeah, completely. I would say that that the power of art, and this event that you're part of, people in Spielart have organized, it's kind of one of the spearheading strategies that the West can create to visualize the damage and to create empathy, because what in the West is called art is basically a sophisticated way to appreciate things together, whatever they might be, right? And to create connections between people across languages, across time and distance. So art, I think, it's more important than we usually think. I would say it's even more important than laws. So
that's interesting.
Yeah.
Explain us why you think that. You're very curious.
Well, I do think that it's a very expansive and it transforms, right? Now, our problem now is urgency, I think. We don't have time. And sometimes art takes time.
Yeah, I mean, art takes very long time to get into pop culture, for example. Like things that artists did in the past are today part of our everyday life, and there were ideas that came from artists or visionary people. Yes, but it takes a while to get into the culture in general. Maybe with the urgency, it will take less time.
Yeah, I was when I was listening to Ailton and Grenache, I have a little blackboard here in my little study, and I was writing something, and because I was thinking that the only future it's a paradox, because we need to be aware that we're one world, right? We need to be constantly reminded that we are one world. But at the same time, this is a paradox, we also have infinite possibilities, infinite worlds in terms of relations that we can create. And this is a paradox that might save us. We need to explore these other worlds, these other narratives, these other possibilities, in order to come back and, let's say, save the one world. So I don't see, it's sort of a multiverse that we need to be aware of. It's not just cultures and their little traditions, but complete universes, each of their own. And we need to go to each of them and see what things work for the vision of one world. It's a paradox, but I don't see any other way.
Well, I think we are. You are definitely working on that, and through your presentation, we can really see the way that you approach Maceual ontology as, in a symmetrical way. And that is a very big turn in terms of starting to look at the practices of others, the world-making practices of others, as valid forms, and maybe as ways that could inspire a form of relation which produces the destruction of Earth, the de-earthing, right? So yeah, in art we are doing that, and we are trying to imagine a moment of art in which activism and art, but also large social movements can be compatible with each other, because the urgency demands that. And I think that is a project of decolonial art, and I think it's also the project of a decolonial ecology, to think about worlds and to practice other forms of world making wherever we are. And this is a portal somehow, no? And we are passing on to this portal, and I hope that the changes that are ahead are gonna be very fruitful, because they are not avoidable somehow. They are unavoidable, and they will become unavoidable, and at a certain point anyway. So
yeah, Yeah, I think one last thing I would like to say, connected to your last comment, is the pernicious, the damaging idea of economic gain as the driving force of Western civilization. Mm-hmm. Everything is subservient of economic gain.
Economic growth also, no? Economic growth described.
Economic gain, yeah. Economic gain and economic growth, yeah, in general, yes. But everything is subservient of that. Even democracy, right? Social freedoms. Because everything depends on wealth. The idea of wealth. It's an idea, right? Because no one has it, well, except with the 1% and some of them live in Munich, I guess. But most of the people don't know wealth because they will never reach it. It's an idea. And if you see Maceiwal's sort of lifestyle, wealth is not an issue. It's not even a driving force of their society. So maybe trying to control that economic gain and economic growth and greed in general, as Maceiwal pointedly signal, might also be part of the answer, right? We don't need that much. We don't need that much.
Yeah, that's a good point. But it made me think also about this idea of scarcity, as I experienced in my childhood with the dam project made in a Mapuche territory. The main argument for the dam was poverty. So the notion of scarcity, these people are poor, we need to help them. The dam came, people tried to avoid it, and the place got inundated, the diversity destroyed, and what was created was actually scarcity. So it's a very, very difficult topic, because actually, because of our notion of scarcity, we create, the economic growth and these developmental projects, big developmental projects, and of course, Western model of development and civilization produce these big projects which create at the end the scarcity that is feared. Yeah. This is a very paradoxical thing for the communities, yes, right?
For example, one of the local slogans in the mountains of Puebla is it's life over gold, mm-hmm, right? Because they have a very clear purpose. They say we are defending life. They're not defending water. They're not defending land. They're not defending resources. They're not defending that. They're defending life itself, which is morally, philosophically, ecologically superior to any discourse, any speech that these corporations might make about progress, about, as you say, fighting poverty, or bringing development. All of these are the constant, the lingo, the concept that they produce. And these people are saying, local indigenous people are saying, no. We're talking about life here, right? We're not speaking the same language. There's nothing you can offer. There's no amount of gold that can buy life, right? So this is the fight.
Yes, this is the fight, and it is sometimes difficult to explain or to make sense. I have with one piece a work that I did, which is related to this film. It's called Climatic Dances. It's a performance, also a dance performance, in relation to the work of Alessandro and in relation also to the place I come from, and this extractivism, which in the Andes, it also takes on somehow ontological violence, because the mountain is reduced to geology, but that mountain was an earth being an apu, so an apu is not really geology. Water is not only H2O, because it's very difficult to defend the earth life when it's objectified, right? when it's deactivated in its capacity to actually be our sustenance, right? Because if I think about H2O, I think, oh, I can mix it with this, I can change it with that, but this is what we are, and this is what we are made of. So this is somehow a distance that is created through that discourse. And for me, it's interesting and also difficult to bridge this experience of sacrifice zones. What it means, to come from extractive place, and in which way can we make that be felt here in Europe, where people don't have so much that experience. I mean, some people do, because some people, there's still ongoing destruction of forests in Europe too. And we know what's happening, like in Finland, around Sápmi areas with transnational corporations, among them also Anglo-American, not in Sodenkylä, but maybe Sodenkylä. So there is an ongoing extraction from our resources, where maybe the possibility would be to recycle the ones that are already there. But there is not so much, of course, it's not so much input placed there yet. And the Green Revolution seems to be very much hide or cover, as you said, the fact that lithium also comes from the earth, that it comes from places where people are living, that its extraction produce toxicity and waste and disease, etc. So very complex to make that shift, and to make that sense felt in the audience when they didn't have this experience.
Yeah, and it's part of I think part of the work that we need to do is to help people challenge the vocabulary that they use. For example, clean energy, right? I have an electric car, I don't pollute, I don't use gas, I've moved to a clean energy sort of car, right? And people don't like to, most people know, but they don't like to think about where the lithium comes from these batteries, these clean energy cars, right? Or these wind farms that people are convinced that, it's just wind, it's just energy, right? It's clean, it's harmless. At last, we've reached an energy that is morally our reflection, clean like us, right? There's this sort of moral superiority. And what they don't see is that these wind farms elsewhere in the world are not regulated as they are in Europe, and they're damaging lands. People are sometimes even killing each other to rent out a piece of land for a wind farm. And there are like legal issues, there are social and cultural issues that are not being addressed. But it's very funny how people cling to the concept of clean energy.
Yeah.
But we're clean.
Because it's very difficult to accept the fact that nobody here, none of us, and can live an ethical life. It is a very painful thing to accept. That the fact that we are connected through changes, and movements that are unethical, and we are sustained by that. It's very difficult to accept that. But I think a very fertile idea is for me, to start looking at things, and that was for me that really changed my perspective when you said that a Messewell person had told you that everything was coming from inside a mountain. And when I started to look at that and start to think that it's not a metaphor, but it's true, I had a very different relation to materialities, and also to objects, and also to the things that I could, purchase or not. I think that is a very beautiful and powerful idea that you brought in my work and in this conversation.
Thank you. Let's hope it helps. I don't know if there's anyone
maybe
who
there are
might
questions
want to say something or have a question before we close. anyone wants to say something, anyone is moved to give an opinion, to share.
If there's none, I would like to thank you very much. Thank you also to Alessandro.
Thank you, Manon.
Thank you for coming today. I hope you enjoyed it, despite the little technical difficulties. We will continue tomorrow at 3 p.m. here with 3 more speeches, 1 film that will be shown. So I hope to see you there, and I hope to see you maybe later at Hoch X, where the second part of the exhibition can also be seen. Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers.